You see, people like to imagine that change is this grand, cinematic moment. They think it's one decision, one breakthrough, one lightning strike that transforms everything. But that's a lie we tell ourselves so we can keep waiting for the right moment. Change isn't a single event. It's not something you do once and then check off the list as if you've crossed the finish line. Change is a process. It's a battle. It's something that happens over and over again because who you are today is not who you'll need to be tomorrow. Life is constantly demanding more from you, and if you're honest, you know that every time you grow, you're asked to grow again. Most people resist this. They want stability, certainty, the comfort of believing they've arrived. But what happens when you stop changing? You begin to decay, you stagnate, you shrink back into old patterns. Change is the antidote to that decay. It's the reminder that you are not a fixed object. You are a living being, a becoming, a work in progress. And progress doesn't unfold in a straight line. It's messy, it's clumsy, it's filled with starts and stops, victories and setbacks. But the pattern doesn't matter as much as the commitment to keep showing up for the process. The danger comes when you convince yourself that the work is finished. When you start to believe that because you've changed once, you don't need to change again. That illusion is deadly because it lulls you into complacency. Life has a way of tearing down the version of you that refuses to evolve. If you don't shed what no longer serves you, life will force you to. It will corner you, break you, and drag you into change whether you like it or not. So the wiser choice, the braver choice, is to step into it willingly. And this is the paradox. We long for comfort, yet our souls are restless in it. The hunger for meaning, for growth, for strength, it gnaws at us the moment we stop stretching ourselves. You know this in your gut. The times in your life when you felt most alive weren't when everything was easy and predictable. They were the moments you dared to take a step into the unknown, when you risked becoming something more. Those are the moments where you felt awake, and they didn't happen once. They kept happening because life is never finished with you. So, change, real change, isn't about flipping a switch. It's about surrendering to a lifelong rhythm of reinvention. You fall, you learn, you rise, and you begin again. That again matters because it's proof that you refuse to settle for the smaller version of yourself. It's proof that you're willing to wrestle with the parts of you that are weak, broken, afraid, and transform them into something stronger. Every time you do it, you become less fragile, less easily defeated. You grow a spine, you develop courage, you start to carry the weight of your own life with dignity. That's the task, not to change once and be done, but to commit to the path of continual becoming. To recognize that every day you wake up, you're given the choice: stay who you were yesterday, or step into a greater possibility of who you might become today. That choice doesn't end. It won't end until your life does. And the truth is, you don't get to conquer the world until you've first conquered yourself. And conquering yourself is a battle that begins anew every single morning. There comes a moment, if you're paying attention, when you realize that the person you've been carrying with you, the one defined by your habits, your excuses, your fears, your self-imposed limits, can't go with you where you're trying to go. And this is the painful truth about growth. You can't bring your old self into your new life. Something has to be left behind, something has to die, so something stronger can be born. But people cling to the familiar even when the familiar is suffocating them. They say, "That's just who I am." As if identity were a prison sentence. As if the mistakes you made last year, the patterns you repeat every morning, the narratives you inherited from your family, are the boundaries of your existence. That kind of thinking destroys you slowly, because it convinces you that who you were is who you must always be. But that's not true. The self you cling to isn't a permanent reality. It's a construction, and it can be dismantled. Letting go of the old self is terrifying, because it means you're stepping into an unknown identity. You can't predict who you'll become when you stop numbing yourself, when you stop making excuses, when you stop hiding behind your anger, your comfort, your distractions. The old self fights to survive. It whispers, "Stay where you are. At least here you know who you are." But that voice is a liar. What it really means is, stay small, stay safe, stay unfulfilled. You know, the truth is, every time you choose to grow, you have to grieve the version of yourself that didn't make it. The one that avoided responsibility, that stayed in toxic relationships, that wasted hours scrolling through nonsense instead of building a future. That version of you has to go. And grieving it doesn't mean you hate yourself. It means you honor the fact that you've outgrown who you were. You can't climb higher while dragging the dead weight of the past behind you. And maybe this is the hardest part of change. It's not the new habits you have to build or the challenges you have to face. It's the act of release. It's unclenching your grip on the familiar self that once gave you comfort but now holds you hostage. It's saying goodbye to the identity that once kept you safe but now keeps you small. That's why so many people stop halfway. They want transformation, but they won't surrender. They want to step into the new life, but they won't bury the old one. The irony is, the moment you finally let go, you feel lighter. You realize that what you feared losing was never your essence. It was just baggage. And with every release, you become freer, sharper, more aligned with the person you were meant to become. This is what maturity looks like. The willingness to cut ties with the self that no longer serves your future. And don't misunderstand, this isn't a one-time act. You'll have to keep letting go again and again because every new level of growth demands another release. Just when you think you've arrived, life will reveal another layer of yourself that has to be shed. But this is not punishment. It's an invitation to stop living as a shadow of yourself and start living as the real thing. If you have the courage to release who you were, you create space for who you could become. And in that space, a truer, stronger, more resilient self begins to emerge. So the real question isn't whether you're capable of change. The real question is, are you willing to let go of the person you no longer need to be? Because until you do, the future will remain just out of reach. The reason most people abandon the path of transformation is simple. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. It pulls you into places you don't want to go, and it exposes parts of you that you'd rather keep buried. And so the moment things start to feel difficult, the moment you're stretched beyond your familiar patterns, your mind begins whispering, "Turn back. This isn't worth it. Stay safe." But here's the truth: discomfort is not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're changing. Think about it. Every muscle in your body only grows because you place it under stress. You tear the fibers, you push them past their limit, and in response they rebuild themselves stronger. The same law applies to your character, to your mind, to your spirit. Without pressure, without discomfort, you stay fragile. And fragile people break at the first sign of resistance. That's why life confronts you with challenges. Not to punish you, but to force you into strength. Yet most people run from this process. They think life should be comfortable. They want growth without pain, resilience without testing, wisdom without suffering. But you cannot evolve on those terms. You cannot become who you're meant to be without being broken apart first. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's the evidence that the old self is dying and the new one is being born. Now, here's the trap. Your mind will always try to convince you that the discomfort is unbearable, that it's proof you're in the wrong place, moving in the wrong direction. But if you look closely, you'll see it's in those very moments when your patience is tested, when your pride is stripped, when your illusions are shattered, that something truer begins to form. You stop pretending, you stop hiding, you confront the reality of who you are. That confrontation hurts, but it's also the only doorway to becoming more. You know this already. Think of the times in your life when you grew the most. Were they easy? Were they painless? No, they were the moments you were stretched so far you thought you might break. They were the nights you couldn't sleep because you were wrestling with fear, grief, or uncertainty. And yet, when you came through, you weren't the same person. You were stronger, wiser, sharper. That's the gift of discomfort. It transforms you into someone capable of carrying weight you never imagined you could carry. And maybe that's the point. If life were always comfortable, you'd never know what you're made of. You'd never discover the depth of your courage, the sharpness of your mind, the strength of your soul. Discomfort strips away the illusions and leaves you with the raw truth. You are far more capable than you've been led to believe. So the next time discomfort shows up, instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "What is this shaping in me?" Because every challenge is a chisel. Every hardship is carving away weakness. Every setback is sculpting resilience. If you avoid the pain, you avoid the transformation. But if you embrace it, if you endure it, if you lean into it, you come out unrecognizable. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. And here's the paradox you need to remember. The very thing you're afraid of, the pain, the pressure, the uncertainty, is the birthplace of the person you've been longing to become. So don't flee from it. Don't despise it. Let it shape you, because the road to transformation is paved with discomfort, and the only way forward is through. Every time you set out to change, you'll stumble. You'll make promises to yourself you don't keep. You'll slip back into the old habits, the old temptations, the old way of thinking. And when that happens, it's easy to declare defeat. It's easy to say, "Well, I tried, but I guess this is just who I am." That voice of resignation is always lurking in the background, waiting for the first sign of failure so it can tell you to stop. But here's the truth: falling down doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're in the fight. What matters is not that you fell. What matters is that you got back up. Resilience isn't built in the moments you succeed. It's built in the moments you collapse and choose to stand again anyway. Every again in your story is proof that you refuse to stay down. That willingness to restart, to rise after falling, is where strength is born. People misunderstand resilience. They think it's about being unbreakable. But resilience isn't about never breaking. It's about refusing to stay broken. It's about facing the voice of shame that says you'll never change, and answering with action, getting up again, starting over again. That repeated act of defiance against despair, that's how you build a life worth living. And yes, it's frustrating. You wish the change would stick immediately. You wish you could cut ties with an old habit once and never look back. But the human story doesn't work that way. Growth is layered, it's repetitive, it's cyclical. You try, you fail, you learn, you try again. Every time you return to the work, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience. You've learned something about yourself, about your limits, about your triggers. And if you're humble enough to pay attention, you can use that knowledge to move forward stronger than before. That's why resilience is the true marker of transformation, because anyone can start strong. Anyone can feel motivated on day 1. But only the resilient can restart after day 50, when the excitement has faded and the work is hard. Only the resilient can face the embarrassment of falling short and still have the courage to take the next step. That's what separates the dreamers from the doers, the refusal to quit just because the path is messy. And if you look closely, you'll see that resilience is what gives meaning to your story. People don't admire those who never struggle. They admire those who struggle and rise again and again, because it reminds them of what's possible in their own lives. When you embody resilience, you don't just change yourself, you light the path for others who are fighting their own battles. Your perseverance becomes evidence that hope is real. So when you feel like you've fallen too many times, when you think the again in your story makes you weak, remember this: The fact that you're still trying is the proof of your strength. Every restart is a refusal to accept defeat. Every restart is a declaration that the old self will not have the final word. It's not about being perfect. It's about being relentless, because resilience isn't the absence of failure, it's the courage to rise in spite of it. And in the end, that willingness to get up again is what makes you unstoppable. One of the hardest things for people to accept is that the future is not something you can script in advance. You can plan, you can prepare, you can imagine, but you cannot control. And that unsettles us. We want certainty. We want guarantees. We want to know that if we do A, then B will follow, and everything will unfold neatly the way we pictured it. But life doesn't work like that. It refuses to give you certainty. What it gives you instead is opportunity, often wrapped in uncertainty, discomfort, and risk. That's where faith comes in. And I don't just mean religious faith, though that can certainly be part of it. I mean the fundamental trust that the unknown is not purely an enemy, that what lies ahead, even if you can't see it clearly, contains within it the possibility of growth, of strength, of meaning. Faith is the decision to keep moving forward even when you don't have the map. When people cling to certainty, they shrink. They stay in jobs that drain them, in relationships that break them, in habits that numb them, because at least those things are familiar. The irony is that the very certainty they're clinging to is what's killing them slowly. They've built a cage and they call it safety. But real safety doesn't come from control. It comes from resilience, from the ability to face whatever happens and not collapse under it. And the only way you build that kind of strength is by stepping into the unknown willingly. Uncertainty will test you. It will strip away your illusions. It will confront you with questions you'd rather not face. Who are you when you don't know what's coming next? Who are you when the path disappears beneath your feet? Those moments are terrifying, but they're also transformative. Because in the absence of guarantees, you discover what you actually believe in. You discover whether your values, your vision, your discipline are strong enough to carry you when nothing else does. And that's the power of faith. It's not about blind optimism. It's not pretending everything will be easy or painless. It's the steady conviction that, no matter what comes, you can face it. That you are being shaped, even in the darkness, into someone more capable than you were before. Faith says, I don't need certainty, because I trust the process of becoming. This is why those who embrace uncertainty end up surpassing those who cling to comfort. Because they step into arenas others avoid. They take risks others are too afraid to take. And yes, they fall, they fail, they bleed, but they also grow. They gain strength that can't be bought, wisdom that can't be taught in a classroom, courage that can't be faked. And when the storms of life come, as they always do, it is the ones who have walked through uncertainty with faith who stand unshaken. So when you face the unknown, you have two choices. You can shrink back into the illusion of control, clinging to what is safe but slowly suffocating you. Or you can step forward, trembling maybe, but trusting that the ground will rise to meet your feet as you walk. That choice is the essence of change. Without it, you stay small. With it, you open the door to everything you could be. And perhaps the most liberating truth of all is this: you don't need to know exactly where the path leads. You only need the courage to take the next step. Because the future doesn't belong to those who seek certainty. It belongs to those who dare to walk in faith. At some point, you realize that the story of your life is not written in stone. It's written in choices, in decisions made one day at a time, in the way you respond to failure, to loss, to opportunity. Too often people live as if their past is the only script they're allowed to read from, as if the mistakes they made or the circumstances they inherited are the boundaries of their destiny. But the truth is, you're not condemned to repeat yesterday. You're not chained to the version of yourself you once were. Every time you change, every time you say, "I am not who I was yesterday," you take the pen back into your own hands. That's the power of becoming the author of your next chapter. It requires courage because it means no longer blaming your story on everyone else. No longer saying, "This is just the way things turned out." It means accepting the responsibility that your future, no matter how uncertain, is at least partly in your hands. And responsibility is heavy, yes, but it's also liberating. Because once you own it, you're no longer waiting around for life to hand you meaning. You're creating it. The past can be a teacher, but it cannot be a master. If you treat it like a master, it will suffocate you. You'll stay trapped in cycles of regret, guilt, resentment, all the things that keep you chained to yesterday. But if you treat it like a teacher, you can take the lessons, burn the rest, and move forward. That's what writing a new chapter really means. Not denying where you've been, but refusing to let it define where you're going. And of course, that takes imagination. You have to allow yourself to see a different possibility, one that might feel absurd at first. A possibility where you're stronger than you thought, where you're braver than you believed, where you're capable of carrying more than you once imagined. Without that vision, you'll keep recycling the same chapter, reading the same lines, wondering why nothing feels different. But when you dare to imagine more, you give yourself a target worth moving toward. Still, imagining isn't enough. You need to act. A new chapter isn't written with dreams alone. It's written with decisions, small ones, repeated daily. Decisions to show up differently, to think differently, to live differently. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. And the more consistent you are, the more your story begins to shift. Slowly at first, then suddenly, you look back and realize you are no longer the person you were. You've outgrown them. You've stepped into someone else entirely, someone you chose to become. But here's the thing. Nobody can do this for you. People can inspire you, they can encourage you, they can point the way, but at the end of the day, only you can pick up the pen. Only you can decide the old chapter is finished, I'm starting a new one. And that decision, as terrifying as it might feel, is where freedom begins. Because no matter how many times you've stumbled, no matter how many wrong turns you've taken, you always have the power to begin again. So don't underestimate what's possible when you embrace that responsibility. Don't dismiss the idea that your life can look radically different 6 months from now, or a year from now, if you refuse to keep recycling the same story. The chapters ahead of you are not yet written, and that means they're still yours to shape. The question is not whether you have the ability to write them. You do. The question is whether you have the courage to stop rereading the old ones. Because the moment you choose to put down the story of who you were, you free yourself to become the story of who you could be. You've been changing all along, even when you didn't notice it. Every struggle, every failure, every step into the unknown has been shaping you into someone stronger. The old self has tried to hold you back, the discomfort has threatened to break you, the setbacks have tempted you to quit, but here you are. Still standing, still choosing, still becoming. That's not weakness, that's strength. So now the question isn't whether change is possible for you, it already is. The question is whether you will claim it, whether you will stop clinging to who you were and finally step into who you're meant to be, because the world doesn't need the smaller version of you. It doesn't need your excuses. It needs your strength, your courage, your willingness to rise again and again, no matter how many times you fall. Your life is waiting to be written, not tomorrow, not someday, now. So pick up the pen, take the next step, and write a story worth living.